This is Chris Morrow at home, and my home is in San Diego, and I'm in my backyard. The panel is Aztec Depictions in Pop Culture, 500 Years After the Fall. We're with David Bowles. Hello.
Hey there, Chris. How's it going?
Going great. Where's your home?
My home is on the border in South Texas. I'm about 5 miles from the Rio Grande. We just went through a hurricane, so it's very nice that the sun is out and things are beginning to dry up.
Well, we're lucky that you have Wi-Fi to be able to talk to me.
Exactly.
Tell us about the panel. How did it go?
It went really well. We had, some really, really great people on the panel. Paul Guinan, especially, who's a good friend of mine, who's doing the Aztec 1520 series, just this great graphic novel that's really grounded in history and research in a way that not a lot of other stuff has been. So it was great being with him and with the makers of a video game also set in that same period. And we had some great conversations around not just our own work, but what other people have done in trying to depict that period of time in modern media.
Can you give me a couple of examples?
Sure. I mean, we talked, we had a wide-ranging conversation from the way Doctor Who handled the Aztecs in the 1960s on a couple of those episodes to the very famous book Aztec by an American author who has no Mexican-American heritage, but whose book went on to be a bestseller that kind of amps up all the lurid aspects of Aztec culture, the bloodthirsty things that run-of-the-mill depictions will center on. And all of us are trying to do much more nuanced work that depicts the indigenous people of Mexico before the conquest as human beings with foibles and strengths and things that are very much shared by all human beings, but yes, that have like culturally specific things that sometimes are striking and unusual.
What did you think about ComicCon at home? Was it effective for you? And did you hook the audience?
I think we hooked the audience. I think that one of the benefits was, because the thing was online, we were able to use slides and video clips and give the audience perhaps a slightly different experience than is feasible when you're moving quickly between rooms and trying to get things set up. We had lots of time, each of us in our own homes. There was no trying to run from one end of the hall to the other end of the hall. So I think it went really, really well. We had a good conversation. We had good questions. We did a follow-up Q&A session through Twitch that a lot of people who had been tuning into the panel popped over into, so we could have questions. Because one of the things that's missing in the at-home experience is that kind of cornering the panelists after the panel as they're trying to wriggle their way out of the room. And those conversations are often really, really rich and a lot of fun. And we were disappointed that we wouldn't be able to do that. And so we wanted to do something that would emulate it a little bit. That those post-panel conversations where people out in the hallway and slowly straggling to the next thing they want to attend get to kind of quiz the panelists on things and go deeper into the questions they have.
Is the post-panel on Twitch, is it recorded?
Yes, it was recorded. It's on Twitch. If I'm not mistaken, it's linked to in the description of the panel on YouTube. So if you find our ComicCon panel in the description, you'll find a link to the recording of that backup, so of that follow-up rather. So it was really, really great. One of the other great advantages of doing it this way is that awkwardness when somebody comes up to the microphone and they're like, I actually don't have a question, I have a statement. Like, you can weed that kind of stuff out. They have to submit their questions and the moderator sees that kind of thing. I was like, nope, we're gonna pass over that without the embarrassment of saying, can you please sit down? So there was a lot, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Can you talk about one of the questions?
Sure. One of the kinds of questions we got were often about how we managed to depict the Aztec culture or other pre-Columbian Mesoamerican cultures in ways that are respectful, that are not stereotypical, and they wanted to know like some of the specific things that we did. They wanted to ask us about how we felt about the fact that there are still indigenous people living in Mexico, the descendants of some of the people that were, were writing about it. I'm Mexican American, so like I share some of that same heritage. With the game creator that was on the panel, Javier also is Mexican, but like Paul Guinan isn't. And so we had some really interesting conversations about the line between like cultural appropriation and like cultural heritage, like more broadly, and the responsibility of people who are fascinated by this period of time and know a lot about it, and who also work in different media like comics, graphic novels, video games, and so forth, to take what we know about this period of time we love so much and share it with the rest of the population, so they're disabused of their like really negative views of these people. And so, those were some really rich conversations about the fine line between, telling somebody else's story and telling a story that needs to be told that you are uniquely positioned to tell. For example, my graphic novel that's coming out in September isn't about the Aztecs. It's about a Maya kingdom 1,000 years ago in Uxmal, which is some ruins in the Yucatan Peninsula. And obviously there are still, nearly 5 million ethnic Maya living in southern Mexico, and many of them have retold that story. But because I'm uniquely positioned in the US market to tell a version of it through a graphic novel that will reach a lot of people in the US English-speaking readers who may otherwise never know about the story and not understand this rich period of time 1,000 years ago. I feel not necessarily an obligation, but certainly an artistic impulse to do that kind of work. It's not definitive by any sense by any sense, but it is certainly just another like stone in the foundation of a better understanding of Native stories. That it's something that's really underrepresented in like all of our media in the United States.
You've written about 20 books. Are they all about the Aztec?
They certainly, well, my books are mainly centered on either Mexican American identity, its roots in Mexico, or the roots of Mexico and pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. So although I do have stories that are set in the present time about Mexican Americans, usually there's some connection to the past. Most of my books are fantasy, science fiction, horror, whatever. And so usually the magical element in the story comes from indigenous pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. So,
how did you get into the passion of writing and then writing about this rich topic?
Well, I think my love for writing started with my love for stories. When I was a kid, my grandmother Garza used to tell my cousins and me, I was the youngest of like a huge group of some like 12 boys. We had one female cousin, and she would sit us down and she would tell us these folk tales and legends that were old when she was a little girl. And it was those usually very creepy, scary stories that got me interested in storytelling. She had everybody spellbound. And because I always had questions for her and wanted to go beyond the edges of the story, she would tell me, David, you need to learn to read because it's books that can answer those questions for you. And so I bugged my mom teaching me to read. And just always, since that time when I was 4 or 5 years old, that I fell in love with stories and learned to read, I've wanted to bring those two things together, the like oral storytelling from the Mexican American side of my family, and the things that I saw happening in the books that I read when I was in elementary and junior high. And so it's been like a lifelong passion just to try to blend those things together. And when I got to college, I realized that schooling in South Texas had kind of erased a lot of really essential things from that storytelling side. I had no idea about pre-Columbian Mesoamerican myth, even though I was in love with mythology when I was a kid. And so I kind of went down a rabbit hole and studied it extensively for a couple of decades, even studying the language of the Aztecs, Nahuatl, which is still spoken in different dialects to this day by about 1.5 million people in Mexico and Central America. And all of that really has informed my initial desire to blend those two things together so that a lot of my stories now have a very, very deep, they're deeply rooted, rather, in Mesoamerican thought and magic and philosophy.
Your grandmother must be very proud of you now.
I sure hope she is. Before she passed on, she was able to see me get published, which was really, really rewarding. And she had like wonderful things to say to me. Although she warned me, you know, you're retelling my stories, so you better do it well, because I will. This is like a funny Mexican American thing. I will come to you when you're asleep and pull on your feet, which is something supposedly that ghost of your ancestors who are unhappy with you will do. And so, as of yet, I have had nothing tugging at my feet at night, so I'm assuming that she's still pretty content with what I'm doing.
We can end this if you want to tell us a nice little story about the Aztecs.
Sure. One of the most exciting things that I'm working on right now is I'm co-authoring a novel with Guadalupe Garcia McCall, a great Mexican-American author, telling the story of the siege of Tenochtitlan, the capital city of the Aztec Empire. And when you're reading about what happened to those people and how after a huge smallpox epidemic had broken out and killed off 1/10 of the population, immediately afterwards they were under siege by the Spanish and their allies. And for 4 months they held out, and they had food and water cut off. Bit by bit, the Spanish and allies were making their way into the city and destroying buildings, and they held out until the very end. The resourcefulness of the people, the fierceness with which they wanted to protect their heritage is just really, really moving. And one of the figures that is just like really catches my attention a lot is the young empress. She was in her early teens at the time, and she was the daughter of Moctezuma, who had died when the Spanish had first occupied the city before being run out. And this young empress found herself married to the new emperor, Cuauhtemoc, and she made it through this horrific siege and the destruction of the city, and she went on to get married to a Spaniard and become a really important figure in colonial New Spain. And at the time of her death, she owned so much property, and there were all these enslaved people that had been given to her by the Spanish crown. And upon her death, in her will, she gave them all their freedom. And so it just strikes me as a story of perseverance and the way that the upbringing of the Aztec people allowed a lot of them to survive the conquest and try to make lives for themselves in this new dynamic. And so that kind of story is just really fascinating, and it's not told enough. We don't hear about the heroes and survivors as much as we do the people who were killed during the conquest.
David Bowles, thank you for your time. This is Chris Morrow at ComicCon at home in my backyard in San Diego. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
You bet. You bet. I can't wait for your next book.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
San Diego!